All right. And with that, wanted to welcome everyone and say thank you so much for taking your afternoon and being here with us to talk about the Oklahoma Early Learning Inventory. We have a lot to share with you all, so we'll go ahead and get started. First, wanted to do a few introductions to our team so that you know who will be talking to you today. First off, I do see some familiar faces, which is great, but for those of you I have not had the pleasure to meet yet, I am Lauren Jenks Jones, and I am the Director of Early Childhood over at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. And I've also got with me some wonderful partners that are members of the Regional Education Laboratory Southwest team, and I will let them introduce themselves, and we'll start off with Katie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you again so much for being here today. Thank you for your interest in learning more about the Early Learning Inventory. My name is Katie Delke. I am a principal researcher at the Regional Education Lab Southwest at American Institutes for Research. And my research is focused on early childhood education, specifically examining the implementation and effectiveness of various early childhood education programs. And that includes conducting mixed methods evaluations, as well as conducting validation studies of early childhood assessments. And our team here at the REL Southwest has been collaborating with OSDE over the past few years as we've been planning for this rollout of an early learning inventory in Oklahoma. And our planning together has been informed by the REL Southwest's work in other states, particularly in New Mexico, where our team has led a validation study of their kindergarten observation tool. So I'm so glad to be here today to provide some more information about the early learning inventory and the study of the ELI, and then also just answer any questions that you all might have. So I will turn it over to Janice to introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for being here. I serve as the facilitator for the Early Childhood Education Research Partnership that we have between OSDE and the REL Southwest. I had a long career in early childhood education, beginning as a pre-K teacher. I've been a program director, a statewide trainer, and now work with research partnerships around early childhood projects and studies. So I'm excited to be here with you, share some information about the work that we've been doing, and welcome your questions. I'll pass it over to Allison.
Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Hauser, and I'm a researcher on REL Southwest, and I've been working in early childhood research for a long, long time. So I'm excited to be here, and thanks for joining us.
Great. Thank you all. I also have to make sure that I give some props to some wonderful people who are also in the room that have been instrumental in developing this tool alongside the REL team and I. Susan Kirk, Melissa Algrim, and Deb Wade, who are part of our team over at OSDE in our curriculum and instruction office, have just been absolutely wonderful and also have a wealth of knowledge about this stuff. So I know that they would love to answer any questions that you may have too. But just want to give a huge shout out to them and how critical they've been. With that, I want to go ahead and move us into talking about what exactly it is we're going to talk about today. So the objectives for our session, we really want to take some time to introduce you to what is the ELI, the Early Learning Inventory, what it is, how it's used, what are some of the potential benefits, and then we want to talk about the study. So what are we hoping to learn? Why are we doing this? What are some of the features that you may expect? And then also share the next steps for participating. If it's something that feels like it might be the right fit for your school or district, we want to share exactly the next steps that you'll be able to take. Also wanted to point you on this slide to that bit.ly at the bottom. That will take you to a copy of this presentation so that you will have all of this at your fingertips. It also has some live links in there for our FAQ and our application that we will get to towards the end of the presentation. But just wanted to make sure that you all had that available to you. And I'm sure we can make sure that that gets in the chat as well. So yeah, that's kind of what we're going to be covering today. you all are the experts on Zoom at this point. I don't think I really need to walk you through exactly how to use the Zoom features, but just in case you're not as familiar with it, here are some places that you can look to make sure you know where the chat feature is available, how to rename yourself. We will have pausing points where we will be taking questions. Allison's going to be monitoring the chat for us. So if any questions come up at any point, feel free to put them in the chat or save them for one of those pause points, and feel free to take yourself off mic when we get to those points. But just wanted to let you know that if that's how you would like to interact with us, we would be more than happy to answer any questions that you have through the chat. So to get us started in the chat, I would love it if everyone could put in their name, their position, title, or job description, and their district and or school. So if you are just district level administrator, obviously you're not going to put your school, but if you're in an actual building, we'd love to know what school you're coming from as well, just so we kind of have an idea of who is joining us today. And I know you all, thank you so much for filling out that registration, and we have all of your contact information as well. And we'll be able to send you the recording of this video afterwards as well for you to access. So if you'll just share those in the chat for us. Great. And I see that they are starting to roll in. All right, with that, it's time to talk about the actual early learning inventory. So I am going to give it over to Janice, who's going to give us a little bit of a background information about how this project kind of came to be, and how it aligns to some big picture visions for early childhood in the state of Oklahoma. And yeah, with that, I'll kick it over to Janice.
Great, thank you. So the process for researching and developing the ELI is just one of several studies and initiatives that the REL Southwest and OSDE have been engaged in together since 2017. So today we're excited to share information about the new ELI and how you can be a part of this important work. But in the very beginning, I just want to make sure that you have an understanding of how we got to where we are today. So in the beginning, we mapped out each of the early childhood initiatives that we wanted to work on through this partnership, and created some short, medium, and long-term goals that OSDE had already identified and was ready to move forward with. So the development of the ELI began first with a look at what other states are doing to learn about students' readiness, academic success, things like that at the beginning of kindergarten. And you may be familiar with the terms such as kindergarten readiness assessment or kindergarten entry assessment. Those, as well as early learning inventory, really are all referring to the same type of instrument or measurement to learn about students' knowledge and skills at the beginning of the school year. Because the Rural Southwest team had previously conducted a validation study of the New Mexico Kindergarten Observation Tool, which is also known as the KOT, we knew that their assessment measure was a strong example that Oklahoma could study. And at the same time that we were looking at New Mexico's instrument, we were also interested in California and Pennsylvania's early learning measures. But because of its ease of use, the validation study results that we already had and had been involved with, and the fact that New Mexico's early childhood standards and Oklahoma's early childhood standards are fairly similar to one another, we chose to model the ELI after New Mexico's KOT. And Katie's going to talk a lot more about that here in just a moment. So after the ELI measure was developed, we began to plan for a statewide rollout and a continuous improvement study, which is why you've joined us here today. And throughout the process, we've kept OSDE's early childhood initiatives and goals at the forefront of all of our decisions, our planning, and the implementation strategies for the ELI. So as you've just heard, we accomplished our short-term goals, and now we're looking forward to our medium and long-term goals. And this is where you can help us. We are very excited to share the ELI with you and to invite you to become a part of this continuous improvement process. These are the important steps that are going to shape the future iterations of the ELI. So OSDE's medium-term goals are to provide an early learning inventory for teachers to use as just one way to understand students' knowledge and skills and to inform instruction. The ELI dashboard, where student data will be collected, will, for the very first time, provide real data on student performance that can be studied and used by OSDE to develop training and resources to support teachers in their understanding and planning for all learners. Collectively, the planning, development, implementation, and continuous improvement efforts of the ELI are ensuring that OSDE's statewide ESSA goals are met. These goals include providing high quality learning opportunities for the state's youngest learners, ensuring that early elementary teaching and learning strategies are aligned, and give every student the best possible leg up to be successful in school, ready to read on grade level and prepared for their academic journey ahead. We also want to make sure that families feel really secure in their decision to enroll their children in Oklahoma state-funded pre-K program, where the earliest foundations for learning success are being built. Now I'm going to turn it over to Katie, my REL Southwest colleague and the lead researcher on this project.
Okay, so the ELI is a multi-dimensional observational measure of children's knowledge and skills, and it's a tool that can be used to help teachers gather information on what children know and can do to help support their data-driven instructional decisions. And they can do that both at the child level as well as at the classroom level. The ELI was developed based on a validated early childhood observation tool that New Mexico has been using statewide with kindergarten teachers. And the REL Southwest partnered with OSDE to modify that New Mexico tool to make sure that it aligned with the Oklahoma academic standards. So what is the ELI? The ELI measure includes a set of 26 essential indicators of students' learning within 6 developmental domains. Each indicator includes its own rubric that kindergarten, as well as first grade teachers, can use to systematically document where their students are across a learning progression. And those 6 domains that are included in the ELI are literacy, mathematics, approaches to learning, physical development, health and well-being, scientific conceptual understanding, and self, family, and community. And that last domain includes skills such as self-control, social problem solving, and accepting guidance. And wanted to note too that a majority of the 26 indicators fall within the literacy and the mathematics domains. Okay. So this slide, it provides an example of one of those rubrics for one of the 26 essential indicators. So above each rubric, the indicator itself is identified, and it's also associated with the relevant Oklahoma academic standards and objectives. Then for each of those indicators, the rubric outlines specific behavioral markers that follow a learning progression. And there's not an expectation that students would enter kindergarten or enter first grade at a particular point on this progression. And there's also not an expectation that teachers should aim to help their students advance all the way through the progression as well. But rather, these rubrics are designed intentionally to have a wide range of competency levels represented, because we know that kids are going to enter kindergarten with very different prior learning experiences, different levels of knowledge and skills, particularly this coming fall. And so including this more extensive progression in the rating rubrics will allow teachers to be able to document that variation across their students. So to use the ELI, teachers will observe their students as they engage in a variety of regular classroom activities during the first 30 instructional days of the year. So this is not an assessment where they're pulling the student aside and doing something different from regular classroom activities. It's very much about observing the students in a structured way during typical instructional activities. And so once teachers have done that, have seen their students in a variety of settings, and they feel like they have collected sufficient evidence to assign a rating, teachers would go ahead and assign a rating for each indicator for each of their students using those scoring rubrics. And they can do this anytime during that 30-day observation period once they feel they have seen enough of the students' knowledge and skills in those areas, or they could do it at the end of the observation period. There'll be a set scoring period in which they would go ahead and assign ratings, and they would assign those into the ELI dashboard. And in that dashboard, teachers will be able to generate reports that they can use for instructional planning as well as for communicating with families. And then teachers can go ahead and repeat this process if they choose to in the middle of the year and in the end of the year to monitor students' progress throughout the year as well. Okay. So now this slide, we're going to show you some examples of the kinds of reports that teachers will be able to generate. There will be a classroom level report, and this report will show all in one place how students in their class are clustered across the learning progressions for each of the indicators. And then there's also a student summary report that the teacher can use for communicating with parents about the students' individual accomplishments, as well as their individual areas for focusing to further develop that student's competencies. And I just note, these are the formatting of this. These are examples from New Mexico's measure and their reports. Oklahoma reports will be similar, but might look a little bit different based on OSDE branding. Okay, so appropriate uses for the ELI. So the ELI is intended to serve as a formative assessment and data source to help teachers make informed instructional decisions about how to tailor instruction to their students. And it can also provide families with information about their child's learning and development. We wanted to make an important point, though, that it is not intended and should not be used to evaluate teachers. So it's not a high stakes measure. It's not meant to serve as a screening or diagnostic tool, and certainly not to exclude students from access to kindergarten, but rather really provide some really good information in a structured way for teachers to observe their students and think about where they need to focus some additional support within the classroom. Okay, so as mentioned, the ELI was adapted from New Mexico's kindergarten observation tool. Therefore, the learning progression coincides most closely with the competencies that kindergarten students would have. However, given that there are some anticipated learning loss this year, and given that the rubrics include competencies that reach beyond kindergarten level expectations, OSDE is offering the ELI as a resource for both kindergarten and first grade teachers for this upcoming school year. As shown on this slide, kindergarten teachers would be encouraged to use the ELI at 3 points throughout the year, and first grade teachers could use the ELI at the beginning of the year to determine what their students know and what they need to work on at the beginning of the first grade year. One other point on this slide, you can see that to the far right, we wanted to point out that while kindergarten and first grade teachers are all welcomed and really encouraged to use the ELI for this upcoming year, for the study of the ELI, we're going to focus on a smaller sample of just kindergarten teachers. And we'll get into more details on that in just a minute, but did want to make this a pause point. So if you all have any questions about anything that we've shared so far, please feel free to let us know.
I know we all love wait time on a webinar. All right, hearing none, make sure that if you have any, you are more than welcome to put them in the chat as they come
Lauren,
up. Or
can I break in for a minute? Because a private
Sure.
question came to me saying, would this be more formative than or replace RSA screeners? And it would not. It would, remember that the RSA screeners are merely to say if a student is at risk or not at risk. This would be what we would consider more diagnostic in nature. So something that might be helpful if you have a student who is at risk of being able to pinpoint what their strengths and areas of need might be. So that's how this would fit in with the screeners that we already use.
Thank you for clarifying that, Melissa. It's a really important point. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and move us on, but if any questions come up, please feel free to add them to the chat. Now we want to talk a little bit about the study and how you all may fit into this picture a little bit more. So first of all, let's talk about the purpose of the study. What are we really trying to do here? like it was mentioned before, this tool was adapted from New Mexico's tool, and we want to make sure that we understand how the tool is working in the context of Oklahoma classrooms. So really giving us Oklahoma specific evidence to make sure that it is just as valid here as it was in New Mexico, with the changes and alignments that we've made to make sure it's the right tool for Oklahoma teachers. With that, we also want to make sure that we're understanding teachers' formative assessment practices and how this may be influencing or impacting those things as they actually use it in their classrooms. But the last, and I think most important reason that we are implementing this study is so that we can continue to improve the tool and make it the best that it can possibly be. And we can't do that without the feedback from the people actually using it in the field. So this is going to give us all that information that we need about how usable it is, if it's clear for teachers, and does it have that reliability that we need and want for it to be a tool that sustains and people are able to use for a long time to come. So the actual study that we're looking to do, we're hoping to have approximately 60 teachers across 16 districts. And within each district selected, we're thinking that they are going to have up to 8 participants, but more likely on average about 5, but it could be anywhere in that range from 0 to 8 that are actually selected to participate in the study. The great feature about this is that we will also be providing a $400 stipend to those teachers for their time and energy and effort outside of contract hours, doing some of the requests that we have to be part of the study. So I will show a little bit more on those here on this next slide. So that $400 that we're providing to teachers is to compensate them for these things that we imagine will happen outside of their contract time. So the first thing is that they're going to be completing an online asynchronous professional development that will be housed on the Oklahoma Edge platform. So that is, it's an LMS, it's where they will be engaging with modules that will give them some background information on formative assessment, teach them how to use the tool, about the data entry, and get them set up to actually walk into their classrooms at the beginning of the school year and implement the tool successfully. We imagine that those are going to take about 6 hours and likely will need to be done in July so that it's close enough to the beginning of the school year that they retain all of that and are able to actually implement the tool effectively based on what they learn in those modules. The second thing is then they actually have to use the tool in the first 30 days in their classroom. So that means they're going to be doing those observations, they're going to be recording those observations about their students, and then rating their students and entering that data into the dashboard. A little bit more about the dashboard, that will be housed in single sign-on and will be populated with their students. So really all they have to go in and do is actually just mark the indicators for the students, and then the dashboard will automatically create those reports that Katie showed us a little bit earlier, which I think are just a wonderful, wonderful aspect and tool coming from this. We're also going to ask them to do some surveys. So there are 4 surveys, one when we ask them to apply, one after they've completed the training, one in the fall after they've used the tool, and then one again in the spring after they've had a year to either continue to use the tool or not, where we're going to gather a little bit more information. We are also going to be gathering student RSA data so that we can include that in our study and validation efforts. And then we're also going to be asking teachers to participate in a focus group where they can give us additional feedback. We can find out what things are working really well, which aren't, and what supports they may need moving forward. So I also wanted to point this out, where Katie showed us that the tool is available for kindergarten, beginning, middle, and end of year, as well as the beginning of first grade. The study and the requirements of the study are really focused mostly on that beginning of the year. So that first 30 days, doing the observations and putting in the ratings into the system in that. Now, we highly encourage teachers to continue to use it and not administer, but use the tool and enter the ratings at the middle of year and end of year as well, because we think it's a valuable tool to continue to use. But their expectations for the study is only that they need to use it and are expected to use it at the beginning of the year. So if this all sounds great and you're thinking, yes, I can't wait to use this tool, and what an added bonus that some of my teachers may end up getting $400 to use it and give feedback, we have a couple of steps for you to take. So the first thing would be to review the FAQ that is linked here. It will give you, there are likely some additional questions that you may have or things that we skimmed over that you may want to go into depth. That is all housed in that FAQ and available for you all to access at your leisure. And then all we would need from you is at this point to complete the district application. So it's some simple questions about who is our contact person, our point of contact, some demographic features of your district, and then just a space for you to ask any additional questions within that application. And that we are hoping to have everyone's back by April 2nd so that we can do the process of selecting districts to participate. Now, not everyone who applies will be invited to participate. So that is important to get those applications in by April 2nd so that we can make sure that you are considered and for being part of the study. So what happens then if you are selected? The big thing is that we then need a district point of contact, which may be you, the person who is attending this webinar or watching it later, or it may be someone else in your district who is better suited to do that. But we'll have that district point of contact identified, and that's who I will be doing most of my communication with. And that person will help us get our contract or our MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, signed by the district superintendent by April 30th. So we're coming up on the end of the year, but from the time that you apply, we've got a few weeks to get that done. And then the liaison will also give us some information by completing a brief survey about their district and some additional features and why they chose to participate. Then their role will be to invite kindergarten teachers to participate. So we will be sharing the communication on how to communicate this to your kindergarten teachers in your district about what the study is and what they need to do to take the next steps to essentially apply or sign up to be part of it. And then you will have those teacher and principal participation agreements into us by May 28th. And then if selected, teachers will know by June 11th so that they can plan accordingly to get their training done in July. I want to pause first and do some questions, and then I'm going to have Janice share a little bit more about the formative assessment piece and some other materials that we have available to you all that can aid as you're thinking about formative assessment. But based on what I've shared about the study, what questions do any of you have that I'd be happy to answer? I'm going to go back to the slide that has I know I'm sorry to click through like this, but that'll be the easiest way to get you the PowerPoint link. Make sure everybody has that. And I see a question specifically from Heather. Heather, if you wouldn't mind putting your email address in the chat, and I will follow up with you individually on your question related directly to your school, and we can absolutely talk through if it would be a good fit. So happy to do that. All right, I'm going to go back. I apologize again for clicking through. This is definitely not the easiest way to view a presentation. But I just wanted to say before I let Janice share a little bit more, how just excited I am about the potential of this tool and what I think the possibility is, especially given this year and given the impacts of COVID-19. And we know that our students are going to be coming from a lot of different scenarios, right? Some of them will have been in school business as usual all year, and some of them may not have seen a classroom yet, and everything in between. And so being able to give teachers the tool to really, really understand the the diversity of the students that are walking into their classroom and really understanding the knowledge and skills that those students have so that they can meet them where they are and plan purposeful instruction, I think is just a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And I am hopeful that you all see it that way too, and will take advantage of being able to be part of it and giving us that feedback. And yeah. So with that, I'm gonna let Janice share a little bit more about the formative assessment piece and some resources that we have available as well.
Sure, thank you. Allison, if you don't mind, if you could put the link to the formative assessment video in the chat box, but also when you receive the video, the PowerPoint link to this webinar, the link to the video, Every Child Shines, is also embedded here in the icon or the image there. So early in the process, when we were developing the ELI, we decided that it would probably be a very important next step to make sure that we did a good job of explaining exactly what formative assessment is, what it looks like, and so on. So we developed this 7-minute video to explain what formative assessment looks like in early childhood classrooms, what best practices look like when using formative assessment, and some of the benefits, of course, of using formative assessment data to inform planning and teaching. The audience for this is really teachers, anybody working with young children, in classroom settings where you're collecting data on students' growth and development, and you're using that information to make informed decisions about what to teach next or what services and learning students need in your classrooms. So it's a very quick video. It doesn't go very deep in, but it does provide a very sound and solid foundation for understanding formative assessment, which is important to using the ELI. During the July training, we actually get into the nuts and bolts of the ELI instrument itself. We'll be talking about formative assessment and very practical ways of using formative assessment with the ELI measure. So that's it for that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Just want to open it up for any additional questions and answers before we let you all go. And just again, thank you for spending your time and being here with us. And we really hope that you will see this as an opportunity and submit an application. All right. Hearing no questions, I'm going to start.